Hi everyone, we might make a start and get into it. My name's Ryan Dorr. I have taught health at the college for about, what is this, about 7 years. I've often not necessarily taught the year 10 students, but more the year 11s and even the ACU course, which is run in the past in the third year. Please let me know if anything's not working technology-wise, because we all know how it is and how it can go. We've seen this year; it can sometimes be quite a struggle. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll get to them probably at the end of the presentation. With that said, I'm going to share my screen with you all. I've got a PowerPoint, and I'll speak to all that. I'm hoping it probably goes for about 15 and 20 minutes. And yeah, please feel free to put any questions in the chat there, or you can just ask at the end if you like. I should have changed this actually. I've copied the psychology one. I should have changed it. It should say health there. I've changed the top but not the middle. But obviously next year as year 10 students, they'll do VCE, health and human development, units 1 and 2. And when they're in year 11, they'll move to VCE, health and human development, units 3 and 4. And then in year 12, there's 2 options available. Now it's kind of in a state of transition at the moment, and I'll kind of get to that very shortly. And by the time your son or daughter is in year 12, we'll obviously have a lot more details. It's kind of just in the process of changing our partnership we had with ACU at the moment. The options there, which is this is for the third year once your son or daughter is in year 12, which will be quite, it's a couple of years away still, so not, it's not of big urgency, but there are 2 options at present. So currently there's the University Step Up program has a bachelor degree level units, which completed through a tertiary provider. It is a chance for the students to experience university life by studying 2 first year units while completing their VCE. In the past, as I said, it's been done with ACU, and I taught that this year. Those students, there's there's a couple of benefits for them. They learn how to write essays, which they'll be required to at uni, and proper referencing. We went to the university in semester 1 at the start of the year before everything kind of shut down, which was good for them to actually see what it's like. They also got those 2 units hex free, which is, saves them a couple of $1,000. And particularly if they do go to work in a healthcare in the future, quite often those units actually end up counting as credits for other things. So I know I've had students in the past who, for example, one was a speech pathologist, and I was studying speech pathology, and I saw him while he was at uni, and he got out of doing certain other units at La Trobe, even though it was an ACU unit he completed, which was good. He kind of moves ahead, and he can pick up something else a bit ahead of time when he's at uni. And the students do like it. So as I said, it's kind of changing at the moment, and we are still offering courses, and we might be through different providers. We're unsure yet, but it does kind of give a bit of an insight into how university works, kind of pathways, that might provide, before they've finally actually chosen one and headed off to uni. And it does give them a bit of a chance to, as I said, work on those university skills, and it kind of does probably help them transition to uni a little bit quicker. And the second option for year 12, if you don't want to do the university pathway, is to pick up a new unit 3 and 4 when you're in year 12. So due to doing one early, that means there's one that it's going to be a spare unit, because you you've done health and human development. You'll then have an option to pick up something else. You won't have completed units 1 and 2, and will instead go straight into units 3 and 4, which we're assuming people will be more than capable. Students will be more than capable of doing, given the fact they're already, I guess, being advanced and in kind of a program which suggests they've got the skills to do so. And by doing 6 unit 3-4 subjects in total, students receive an additional 10% increment towards their ATAR at the end of year 12. Most VCE subjects do not require students to have completed units 1 and 2 to be able to enroll in units 3 and 4. So there is a bit of an advantage if they do choose this route. They do get a little bit of an addition to their ATAR in the end, and your top 4 subjects count for your ATAR. This is without me going to everything about the ATAR. Your top 4 subjects count. English has to be one of them, and you do, I guess, have more potential top 4 subjects if you do complete 6 Unit 3, 4 subjects, because with 50% of your marks being determined by the end of year exam in year 12, which the students are currently sitting through at the moment at our college, quite a lot can change, in terms of what students think they might do well at. And in the end, I guess the more the better, and the better scores and the better ATAR they will receive. For next year, the structure of the classes are that Wednesdays from 1:50 to 5:20, the class will run, which is a bit different to how it's done previously. And I wasn't really aware of this. Usually it was a bit more during the middle of the day, but now they've pushed it back to later. Students will get a break around 3:30 or so approximately when the teacher decides. But however, the orientation lesson next week, on the 2nd of December, will just run from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So it's a bit of a shorter one for that. And what your son or daughter will be learning next year. So there's a bit more detail here into Units 1 and then Unit 2, and a bit less for Unit 3 and 4, given it's a whole year away. And I'm sure the teacher will go through that with a bit more detail when they get to the Year 12. But for Year 11, or Unit 1, Health, what you learn in the first semester is the dimensions of health and well-being, how to measure health status. It's using things such as life expectancy and looking at kind of common diseases or illnesses and looking at the statistics behind that. Then they look at factors influencing health and well-being. So what determines or can determine someone's level of health and how they would, or even their well-being as well. So they kind of look at that. And the next section's on nutrition. It just goes through the common nutrients that Australians might have too much of, that are usually bad, or too little of that they need, which that can be good. And then it looks at ways in which we can try and change dietary behaviour and why it might not be that great in Australia. And the last section, Area Study 3, Youth Health and Wellbeing. That's just on common issues that impact youth health and wellbeing. So it looks at things like weight issues, mental health, alcohol use, injuries such as road traffic accidents. And the students usually do a bit of a research report, pick one that they like. Usually if I run the class, that's what I do. I get the students to pick one that they like, and they kind of do a bit of a written report on it, and they use the statistics that they've learned throughout the semester, the factors we've used at times to come up with a bit of a report on that, and look in ways in which we're trying to limit those issues and to improve the youth's health. So that's Unit 1, that's the first semester of next year. Usually it's done with a test, a short answer test at the end of each one. As I said, maybe for the third one, I would sometimes do a bit of a written report as opposed to a series of short answer questions. And there usually is a end of unit exam as well. This year, due to COVID-19, we didn't have that at the end of Unit 1, but I'm sure if everything stays right, that we'll be doing that halfway through next year. The second semester, so the second half of the year, the unit's called Managing Health and Development. It focuses a bit more on development through the lifespan, so how people improve their skills, whether it be social skills, their motor skills, their cognitive skills, and how, if someone was delayed or ahead, how that might lead to impacting future development for them. And part of that is also looking at quite a bit more in depth at prenatal development. So if any of the students are interested in being midwives in particular, that's usually quite a bit of interest to them. So it goes through everything from conception to birth, looking at the different stages and what happens, things that the mother should do while pregnant, and factors to consider if you want to be a parent as well. That's all that one. And the second area of study is on Australia's healthcare system. So it's looking at things like Medicare and private health insurance, and just looking at, I guess, firstly as a bit of a life skill, what can you get, covered or subsidized? What's the pros and cons? If you had a certain health condition, what could you get? Kind of looking at those things for that. As many students will obviously probably be working in the healthcare system, so it's very good information to know. And then lastly, there's a little bit on digital technologies, which I guess are being used more commonly in health, ranging from things um, like teleconferencing for health, with GPs, um, um, just have a meeting with them. So that's, we have to use that a lot more this year. So just kind of things like that, which can, we're kind of changing the way we're managing our health as a country. So that's all of next year stuff. There's also a unit 2 exam, I should say, as well. That's all the stuff for year 11. And in units 3 and 4, which, yeah, your son or daughter will be doing when they're in year 11, so a year or so away. It looks at Australia's health in a globalised world for Unit 3, which is really just more of a focus on Australia at that point. A lot of the stuff kind of doubles up from the previous year. So it does kind of build your skills for this Unit 3. A lot of that same thing that we've just mentioned comes up again. But some additional things, we kind of look at different population groups and compare their health. So like males and females, or Indigenous Australians and non-Indigenous Australians. Nutrition again, and we kind of look at models of health, which is how we go about trying to improve health, in society. So, be it from TV campaigns to local programs to laws, and we kind of analyze the effectiveness of them in how, and look at Australia's health as a result, and we know that's very good. So we kind of use that to kind of say some things are working, and that's why Australia is in good health. And the last bit for the course is, it's more about, health around the world. So it is looking at, often quite comparing other countries that aren't doing so well with their health and human development, and comparing them to Australia. So, um, we're comparing the stats that we talked about earlier. We're looking at some of the reasons behind that, or the factors that would impact their health. We look at the Sustainable Development Goals, which are a United Nations project to try and improve health. And then we look at Australia's aid program and what they try to do to improve, I guess, the global health and well-being, and what Australia tries to do. So that's all the health and human development aspect of it. The next bit's the more boring stuff, to be honest. We'll go through very briefly the uniform, the attendance, the lateness, and transport to and from school. For health, students are expected to come to class in full college summer or winter uniform. There should be no PE uniform. Health, if it's a practical class with health, it's going to still be classroom based most of the time, and there's no running around or exercise or anything like that. So you should still be in full, college summer or winter uniform, and not PE uniform. Attendance is compulsory, and this college is quite strict on this. If your son or daughter does miss a class, the student, must provide a medical certificate. Doesn't mean every single time. It means that I'd say, without going all the way through the rules, if you miss one class, that's fine without a medical certificate. And we do understand things happen. You can get a stat deck as well, as much as you can, but ideally a medical certificate. If it adds up to then to be, say, 2 full days that are missed at some point, that does put the student at risk of receiving a not satisfactory, as it's probably too many lessons missed. So as it says there, if a student does miss a lesson, obviously work with the subject teacher, which, look, as I said, it won't be me. Hand them the medical certificate and they can pass it on. And they can pass it on the following week once they're back. And I know there's a bit more to it without going through it, but I think that just the best practice is, if a student misses a class, just to go get a medical certificate, or a stat deck at worst, and that way there'll be no issues with this. And I know there's times going off past years when I have had the year 10s and have taught them for these days, that there's been things like work experience and other school commitments that have happened with um, students. Don't worry about that. That's fine. We understand that, and that won't count. It's more things, just unexplained absences that we are unaware of with the students. Why, I guess, the reasons why they're not at the college on that day. Lateness. If a student is late to class, you're required to sign in using the kiosk at the front office. These minutes will accrue and contribute towards overall attendance. I don't know how this will all, how schooling will be working next year in terms of some of the things we've got in place at the moment. But currently, there's only a couple of gates open just so students can be temperature tested on their way in, and we do need students to do that. So it is important, if they are late, you come in through the front desk, you do sign in where a lady in the office will temperature test just to make sure everything's all good. Um, and yeah, and that way it's all logged and the student can go to class. And lastly, for transport, students are to organise their own method of transport to and from the college. I know in St Albans in the past they've had a bus, that's fine. But students, could take public transport or being dropped off and picked up, but that's your responsibility for that. And if you do have any further questions, as I said, I won't necessarily be teaching your son or daughter next year, but I've often taught the year where they're in year 11 and they're doing units 3 and 4. I've had that for the last 3 or 4 years at least. So if you do have any questions, you can contact me there. If there's my email, that might be easiest. Or if you want to discuss anything, and you can call me up on the school's number there, 9361 0000. I'll be more than happy to get back to you. And that's all. Are there any questions? If you'd like to put them in the Q&A. No, it doesn't seem like it. All right. Well, if you do have any questions, as I said, my email's there. I'm more than happy to help. Thanks for attending tonight. I hope that helps and clears up any questions you might have. I'm sure if they've got your son or daughter's got any questions next week, they can just ask their subject teacher next Wednesday when they'll be in. I'm sure they'll be happy to help. But yeah, thanks for attending and have a good evening.